This is Standard 4 Continued Components of Language, Variations in Language Use, and the Reflection. Components of language. Accomplished teachers have a strong background in the components of language, phonology, vocabulary, grammar, and discourse, and know how to facilitate English language learners' effective use of these components. Phonology. Accomplished teachers are knowledgeable about the sounds of the English language and the ways these sounds combine to form words. They understand basic stress and intonation patterns of English. They also understand English syllable structure, which may vary from those used in their students' primary languages. In addition, they understand the complex spelling system of English. Vocabulary. Accomplished teachers have extensive knowledge of word meaning and usage. They effectively explain aspects of words needed to understand multiple meanings and connotations. They analyze and explain information concerning, for example, spelling and the use of words in grammatically correct ways. They teach students roots, affixes, and common Greek and Latin-based English words. Teachers know how to choose words useful in academic situations that have considerable bearing on students' understandings of the school curriculum, such as words with large word families. Teachers of newcomers, regardless of when students enter the classroom, select words that students need in emergencies, such as help, stop, and fire, as well as words essential to students' everyday lives. Teachers of students with advanced levels of English proficiency identify challenging words and examples of word usage that students need to know to access difficult texts, pass exams, make academic presentations, and succeed in mainstream classrooms. Teachers of English language learners in content classes may identify content-specific vocabulary that often causes confusion and that is essential for learning and expressing important concepts. Grammar. Accomplished teachers identify and explain the basic features of grammar in the context of meaningful communication. They develop instructional sequences for the presentation of grammar based on criteria, including an analysis of instructional material. Through knowledge of students' primary languages, as well as through formal and informal assessments, teachers identify and address students' grammatical needs by determining the causes of errors. Teachers are well versed in English morphology and syntax. Because many students at intermediate levels of English language proficiency have difficulty improving their grammar, teachers of these students identify challenges presented by problematic grammatical features such as noun systems, complex clauses, conjunctions, and embedded quotations. To meet the needs of learners at advanced levels of English proficiency, teachers develop an extensive familiarity with grammar that includes knowledge of passive constructions, conditionals, and causative structures. Discourse. Accomplished teachers are adept at analyzing the forms of discourse, including functions such as complaints and refusals, genres such as stories and lab reports, and conventional organizational features such as openings and closings of conversations and expository writing. They determine problems students encounter in communicating, and they examine the discourse sources of the problems. Accomplished teachers know writing conventions and discourse organization differ across languages and cultures. For some cultural groups, for example, the introduction to a business communication requires an exchange of initial pleasantries before revealing the purpose of the letter. Dear Sir, I hope this letter finds you well and you are enjoying our fine spring weather. I am writing to request a copy of your invoice for services rendered. Teachers of newcomers who enter their classes at any time of year are adept at identifying specific discourse features that should be taught immediately. Teachers of learners at advanced levels of English language proficiency know the characteristics of a large array of complex genres such as argumentative, narrative, informational, descriptive, literary analysis, and expository writing. Content teachers of English language learners teach the discourse features of characteristic of their content areas. Mathematics teachers, for example, can explain the structure of word problems, focusing students on the relationships between numbers. Variations in language use. Accomplished teachers analyze variations in the use of English, language variation, social language, and academic language, and consider other variables such as situational settings. They are familiar with dialectology and the range of dialects used in the United States, particularly in the communities where they work and in the countries from which students have come. They recognize code switching as a means of participating in social interaction, building community, and expressing identity. Teachers understand the characteristics of social language and academic language. Social English language. Accomplished teachers are aware of the characteristics of social language, including vocabulary and fixed expressions, grammatical features, and discourse structures. Teachers recognize the language that students need to use when interacting informally. They are able to explain clearly the social consequences of inappropriate words and utterances. Teachers, for instance, identify and explain politeness features that students may use in social situations. They recognize that social language has important features that may be too subtle for students to recognize, such as nonverbal cues that others may provide in the course of interactions. They identify the specific types of social language that can improve students' interpersonal relationships, help them gain peer acceptance, express their own views and emotions, and recognize others' views and emotions. For early childhood students, for instance, teachers understand the value of pretend play and cooperative play activities in promoting language and literacy development and learning. Teachers provide opportunities for early childhood students to have time for play in centers where conversation can be incorporated into play. Academic English usage. Accomplished teachers understand that language required in academic settings is complex and can be less familiar and more demanding than the language of everyday settings. Teachers know that students' facility with academic English is crucial to access content area curricula and to benefit from instructional activities, assignments, and assessments. Teachers may determine that students need to know specific words relevant to all content areas such as analyze, evaluate, discuss, and clarify, as well as grammar characteristic of specific content areas such as passive structures in science and the non-literal forms of language such as idiomatic and metaphorical expressions used in literary texts. Accomplished teachers analyze the features of academic English used in various content areas, drawing on their broad understanding of key concepts and the linguistic demands that content areas require of the English language learners. Regardless of instructional settings, teachers are familiar with content-specific language students need to study history, for example. Teachers know that students must understand language dealing with causation, time, order, and sequence. To assist students in understanding algebra, for instance, teachers examine the language of math problems and language important to understanding number systems, symbolic expressions of quantitative relations, or trigonometric functions. For early childhood students, teachers might provide opportunities for students to express causality, such as I like blank because blank. Accomplished teachers know that students, regardless of English proficiency levels, can engage in higher order thinking, and they foster essential skills that allow students to hypothesize, infer, generalize, and predict. Teachers analyze the language forms and functions that appear in academic texts and tasks, such as complex clauses and decontextualized language, which convey meaning through linguistic clues independent of the immediate context. Reflection. Accomplished teachers of English language learners reflect on the vital role that a strong knowledge of English plays in learning and communicating. When considering the essential language domains and components, they realize the need to stay abreast of the most current literature in a field and reflect on how they can use research findings to inform their instruction. Teachers reflect on their analysis of the language demands of tasks and texts, anticipating the language needs of students and the linguistic challenges they face. Teachers reflect on their observations of students' progress in acquiring specific features of language. Teachers analyze their knowledge of language domains, components, and variations to address students' communicative needs in listening, speaking, reading, writing, and visual literacy in a wide range of social and academic settings. Their reflection is based on a deep understanding of the systematic yet variable nature of language and of the value of a multilingual society.